It is now 6:30 and I'm calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School District 204 on Monday, April 13th, 2020. Jackie, will you please call the roll?
As I call your name, please unmute your microphone to respond. Mr. Karubas?
Here.
Mr. Razak?
Here.
Ms. Peel?
Here.
Ms. Deming?
Here.
Ms. Grover?
Here.
Ms. Donahue?
Here.
And Mr. Rising.
Oh, and Mr. Rising.
Here.
And we're all here and we have a quorum. Next, we move to recess to executive session. Please identify yourself as you make your motion or second. I need a motion to recess to executive session.
This is Mark Rising. I move to make a motion into executive session for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of a public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to specific employees of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act.
I do have a motion. Please identify yourself with your second, please.
This is Susan Deming, and I second the motion.
So I do have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Jackie, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Deming?
Aye.
Ms. Grover?
Yes.
Ms. Peel?
Yes.
Ms. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Razak?
Aye.
Mr. Karubas?
Yes.
The motion passes. We are now recessed into executive session. Okay, the time is now 7:01. I'm reconvening to open session and calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School District 204 on Monday, April 13th, 2020. Jackie, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Deming?
Here.
Ms. Peel? Mr. Karubas?
Here.
Mr. Razak?
Here.
Ms. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. Rising?
Here.
Ms. Grover?
Here.
I guess that's everyone. We do have a quorum. Ms. Grover, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, in liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Grover. In this difficult time, as you know, boards of education are bound by strict provisions of the Open Meetings Act. With the onset of COVID-19, some of the guidelines have been relaxed. Specifically, board members do not have to be present. As a result, video or audio conferencing is allowed. Boards are encouraged to provide this video or audio access to the meetings in order that the public may monitor our meetings. All other Open Meeting Act requirements remain in place. Quorum of the board must participate. All meetings must be open to the public, except any portion of the meeting that is closed for one or more reasons in the act. The meeting must include an opportunity for public comment. Requirements relating to meeting notices, agendas, and minutes must remain applicable. Please know that our board will continue to meet these requirements in this most difficult time. It is now the portion of our meeting for public comment. However, no one has signed up for public comment, so we can move on. And we will now move to our consent agenda and superintendent report. And we will start with the superintendent report.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you, if only virtually. This is our second virtual meeting, school board meeting that we've had as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our thanks again to our technology department led by Adam Smeets for all the behind the scenes work necessary to hold this board meeting. And as you know, we continue to be under the governor's stay-at-home order until April 30th. We'll continue to serve our families through remote learning, and we'll communicate when we are told that it is safe to reopen our schools. We want to thank First Student today and its drivers for all the support during remote learning. In addition to helping deliver meals for families for pickup at our schools, today drivers started delivering 3,400 resource packets to the homes of our youngest students in grades kindergarten and first grade. And these packets support learning from home for these elementary students, so thank you again. A reminder that both our Organic Life and First Student partners are continuing to help us distribute food to our families that need it. Breakfast and lunch can be picked up at any of our elementary schools between the hours of 11 and 1. On Wednesday, I will be joining the superintendents of East Aurora, West Aurora, IMSA, and the Aurora Christian Schools for a talk with Mayor Irvin on teaching, learning, and leading during the COVID-19 crisis. It will be a Facebook Live event starting at 12:30. For our high school students, want to be sure that they're aware that the College Board has made some significant changes in a short time to ensure that our students can complete their advanced placement coursework, demonstrate their knowledge, and earn college credit. So the College Board exams will be administered as 45-minute assessments that can be taken anywhere. So please take a look at our website for all the details on that. We also want to remind people about the census. Every 10 years, a census is taken of all persons living in the United States, and it's important that every Illinois resident be counted so that our state population accurately reflects our needs. Census participation determines the amount of federal money Illinois receives each year to support our schools, as well as other things in the community, hospitals, programs for seniors, veterans, etc. But it is an important aspect for our school funding. So even during this pandemic, the census is happening now. So the most important thing that you can do is to respond to the census questionnaire when you receive it. And for the first time, you can choose to complete the census online by phone, or by mail. And to learn more, visit www.2020census.gov. So we hope that everyone will complete that. And finally, again, a thank you to the Indian Prairie Educational Foundation. The IPEF has provided more than $20,000 to families needing support due to the COVID-19 crisis thus far. Through the Kids Essentials Fund, the IPEF is providing support for food, transportation, and basic necessities. Thank you to all the community members who donated to this effort. You can find information on the district's website about how you can donate to help support families in need during this difficult time. The need seems to get bigger every day, so we ask again that our community step up to help those families less fortunate in these challenging times. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Next, we will move to our consent agenda items. Again, please identify yourself as you make your motion or second. I do need a motion for the approval of consent agenda items D through N as presented.
Hi, this is Lori Donahue. I move that the Board of Education approve consent agenda items D through N as presented.
I do have a motion. I do need a second.
This is Natasha. I second.
Hi, this is Susan Deming. I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a couple of seconds. We'll take Natasha's first. Thank you, Susan. So we do have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda items. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll, Jackie.
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Yes.
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Peel,
Yes.
Mr. Karubas,
Yes.
Mr. Rasak.
Aye. Motion passes. We are now moving next to our discussion items. First, we have Kathy Pease to talk about our new high school course curriculum.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to virtually be here with you to share the works of many of our curriculum teams. And these teams were led by Ryan Giovannini, our Director of Innovation, Mike Purcell, our Director of High School Core Curriculum, and Grant Saar, our Director of Elective Curriculum. Tonight, we don't ask for any action on your part. We just want to review some of the curriculum items for you. This relates to Board Policy 640, which looks at content of curriculum. So in October 21st, 2019, you were gracious enough to approve some new courses for us, business certifications, cybersecurity, Project Lead the Way, aerospace engineering, music production 1 and 2, athletic training, botany, and American Sign Language 4. And so tonight we're going to provide you with the curriculum for those areas as it has been written, along with Advanced Placement World History, which is a revision required by the College Board. Both the Advanced Placement course as well as Project Lead the Way are curriculums that are provided to us by College Board as well as Project Lead the Way. We believe that these curriculums fit within the board's guidelines as well as provide students with opportunities to achieve the competencies as outlined in the 204 Portrait of a Graduate. Our teams of teachers have worked collaboratively to create the units of study for these students, and they're excited to engage the students in this curriculum. We'd like to make these curriculum available for review until the May 11th, 2020 Board of Education meeting, where at that time we would ask for approval. So at this time, I'd like to recommend that we provide these resources for review until the May 11th, 2020 board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Pease. Of course, this is just discussion at this time. And are there any questions for Ms. Pease? It's difficult for me to see hand raising, so please just come on and identify yourself as you ask your questions.
This is Susan Deming. Ms. Pease, can you just clarify how we will make them available so that that we know?
Sure. If someone would like to email at curriculum@ipsd.org, we would be happy to reach back out to them and make them available, share with them. These are also available on the board website. If they look at this meeting, all the curriculums are available for them there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Deming. Other questions or comments? It appears I have none. Thank you, Ms. Pease.
Thank you very much. We'll see you in a month.
Thank you. Next up is our budget forecast with Jay Strang. Welcome, Jay, to the meeting.
Good evening, board members. I believe Mr. Schmitz is putting up the presentation now. The last time that I was in front of you and shared our forecast, it was 6 weeks ago prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact of that on our economy and our finances. And I wanted to take an opportunity to share with you a new forecast, which takes into account some of the things that have changed most recently. I want to caution everyone that this is just the first of a series of forecasts as we move into the spring and summertime, and that it's very likely that things will change regularly, weekly, if not daily, as we find out how this economy is going to change due to this virus. So, Mr. Schmitz, if you can advance the next slide. In this presentation, I'll just go over some of the Illinois Association of School Administrators recommendations. And I'm proud to say that Dr. Sullivan's cabinet administered a lot of these before these recommendations came out. I'll talk about the revenue adjustments that we've made, the expenditure adjustments, and then we'll summarize both the operating funds and non-operating funds for this presentation. Please advance the slide. The Illinois Association of School Administrators came out with their COVID-19 finance recommendations about a week ago. And on March 11th and 12th, while we were still in our offices trying to determine whether or not we were going to have school or extracurricular activities, we began to consider these events at that particular time. We immediately started to look at our cash flow and our assets, our investments, to make sure that they were as liquid as possible so that we could have those monies available should we need them. We immediately stopped purchase of all non-essentials and took a real hard look at any purchases from that point on being something that supported the instruction of our kids who are now learning remotely, and our staff who are doing a remarkable job administering their education in a very new fashion. So we really tried and focused on what was needed to get us through this this shutdown and this remote learning experience. We also took a good look at all of our existing contracts throughout the school district. That includes our transportation, custodial maintenance, and other private contracts. As you know, we'll be coming to the Board of Education in May with some contract amendments, some things that we've put together to partner with some of our vendors to make sure that we all get through this pandemic with the least service disruption as possible, and to safeguard our finances as we try and move forward. We looked at staffing and benefits immediately and decided that we would not be hiring any new staff, but we would be filling existing positions. And as you know from previous discussions, we're in the process of looking at our negotiated health insurance plan. We have Blue Cross Blue Shield, who is our administrator, and we are in the process of going through a request for proposals to see if another firm would like to bid or put in a proposal for our services. Because of this pandemic and our inability to get together, our March and April meetings were canceled, but we believe that we can get together this summer or in early fall. We can still have time to evaluate requests for proposals and make a recommendation to the Board of Education in the early fall for a January 1 new plan year. So we still think that there's time to look at some significant savings in our health insurance. The other thing that we did is we really took a good look at our travel and decided that immediately we would not allow any more travel in-state or nationally. And I think the first blush of that was that we had some folks who were going to some local conferences, and it didn't make sense that we put people in the position where they may be in contact with the virus, and then immediately realized that there were some financial implications. So we decided not to do that travel across the district. Finally, as we move forward into the summer and the fall, I know that the Leadership Services Department is going to be talking with the principals about staff travel and student travel as we look at reopening school and getting back to a more normal existence. Please advance the slide, Mr. Schmitz. Thank you. One of the things that we had to look at was our revenue adjustments from our first forecast, which was 6 weeks ago. And if you can remember, board members, that was a 5-year forecast, and now I've brought it down to a 3-year forecast. Under normal conditions, I would have taken a 5-year forecast and made it a 3-year forecast. It's too difficult to look out 5 years and really be able to know what's happening and to be able to really take a look at that and say what decisions we make now are really going to make a difference in the 4th or 5th year. So as we get closer to building a budget, it's important to really look at the more immediate years. But we did have to make some adjustments as a result of the economy slowing down. And I went back and I looked at the recession of 08 and the years that followed, and had an opportunity to go through those files a week or so ago. And it was interesting to look at that and think that maybe there was something there that I could learn, that I could apply to the economy now. And kind of sad to think that I had to look back at something like that. And I never thought we would do that again. But it did lead to some good discussions with some of my counterparts in other school districts. And it did give me some sense of what we might expect from the economy slowing down. And I'll just share some of those adjustments with you. The consumer price index that came out this last January was 2.3%. So we know what that is. That's a known, and that's a fairly strong consumer price index. But fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, in the first forecast, I had a 2.0% CPI anticipated. With the economy slowing down, I've adjusted those to fiscal year 22 being a 0.3 and fiscal year 23 being a 1.5. If you think back to the 08 economy, which was caused by a housing bubble that burst, that second year, that fiscal year 09, we had a 0.1 consumer price index. So the 0.3 consumer price index is in the ballpark of what we received the year after the Great Recession started. The 1.5% consumer price index is the average of the following 4 years. So if you looked at the crisis of 08, and then you look at 09 being a 0.1, the following years, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 was a 1.5% consumer price index on average. So if you look at that from the first forecast to the second forecast, the one I'm presenting tonight, you can see there's a $4.6 million loss in revenue in 22 and a $1.4 million loss in revenue in 23. The other thing that occurred back in the Great Recession was that the home values, existing properties, started to decline, and they declined slowly over time. They didn't go into a negative position until the later years. So I've adjusted our existing EAV, the homes that we're all in now, not the new construction, down from a 3.5 to a 2.5, a 3, and a 3. There's no real bearing on our revenue associated with this, but it does impact the tax rate. And that's something that we'll pay attention to, because as the property values go lower, the tax rate will go up, and that's generally not a good thing. New property, that's Wagner Farms and the other construction that's going on in the school district. In the first forecast, I had $55 million worth of new property forecast in each of those 5 years. And you can see in this forecast, I adjusted that down to $45 million in 21, $26 million in 22, and $26 million in 23. When you look back at 08, and then you looked at 09, the Great Recession started in 08. Our CPI was a 0.1, but we really did have a fair new construction number in 09. And that's because projects were under construction and developers wanted to complete them. It was in the next year that the new construction really slowed down to a very small number. And if you look at the 26 million in 22 and 23, that's the average of the following 4 years after 09. So in fiscal year 10, 11, 12, and 13, we were seeing about $26 million on average in new construction. You can see from that the revenue loss from local sources and new property from the first forecast to the second forecast being a loss of $500,000. $1.4 million, and $1.4 million. As I quickly mentioned on the earlier slide, we've made are making an effort to make our assets as liquid as possible in case that taxes don't come in on time, or there's any delayed payments from the state, that we've got our resources available for us to get through our business. When you do that, and when you look at the interest rates dropping just from the economy, we're anticipating a $1 million loss in revenue in each of these 3 years. So our local resources will be impacted by COVID-19 and the economy. How? It's to be determined, but this is our first blush at it. And I'm telling you, I really believe that it's going to change pretty regularly until we get to a draft budget in the springtime. When you look at our state sources, evidence-based funding, I've got flat. So I'm saying in that is that we're going to receive exactly what we received this year in evidence-based funding, but we're not going to receive our tier funding, and that's $800,000 each year compounded. So we're going to lose $800,000 in 21, 22, and 23. As I listen to news that's coming out of Springfield, and I talk to my counterparts, and Dr. Sullivan shares information that she gets from her colleagues, I think there is a possibility that our evidence-based funding, if it's flat, is pretty optimistic. The state may not be able to give us what we got this year, but that remains to be seen. And as the forecast moves into the springtime, and we hear more, I will let you know. The other downgrade to our financial forecast and revenue is in our categorical payments. As you know, we receive 4 categorical payments a year. This year we received 1, and we received it about the time we did last year. And had this not occurred, I believe we would have received our other 3 categorical payments before the start of the school year, and we would have received 4. Now, I think we'll be lucky if we receive 2 categoricals for this year. That being said, I don't think it's appropriate to think we're going to get 4 categoricals in fiscal year 21 or fiscal year 22. So I've downgraded that to just 3 in each of those years, and back to 4 categoricals in 23. If we do not receive a categorical payment in 21 and 22, you can look at a loss of $2.9 million for each of those years. All of this is based on information that I got at the time, experience that we've had during the Great Recession, conversations I've had with my colleagues, and I really believe that this is going to change a number of ways before we actually pass a budget in the fall. Next slide, please. So when you think of the loss in revenue from the first forecast, which you received about 6 weeks ago, to this forecast, you can see that in 21, it's $7,251,000 of loss. In fiscal year 22, it's $10,738,913 in loss. And in fiscal year 23, it's $12,167,497 in loss. Cumulative loss of this forecast in just revenue from the first forecast is $30,157,411. Given the assumptions that I shared with you, which again, I believe are going to change between now and when we pass a budget. Next slide, please. Typically, when we're looking at our forecast and we're preparing for the next school year and the school year after that, whether we've got an excess in funds or we're looking at a shortfall in funds, the superintendent's cabinet gets together and we talk about where do we want to place our money, where are our values, what initiatives are we working on, what district goals we want to support as we move forward. Unfortunately, under this scenario where everyone's working remotely and the superintendent's cabinet and the principals and the teachers are focused really hard on the day-to-day of providing instruction to students, we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and talk about how we can mitigate some of the loss in revenue. So I took it upon myself to put some things in here as a placeholder to soften the loss of the revenue from the first forecast to the second forecast. The first is in staff reductions. We've been losing about 200 students a year for a number of years now. Roughly, that's about 15 teachers a year. If you just look at the loss of students and the number of FTEs that we would need to support those students. Over the last 4 or 5 years, as we've lost students in enrollment and we had FTEs available, we redeployed those FTEs to positions of need, to classrooms where we had a need for students who were on free and reduced lunch or English language learners. A number of FTEs went to special education and to social work and social emotional learning. In the first forecast that I presented of the 15 FTEs, I was pulling 5 back to support the budget and allowing 10 to be reallocated across the district. The timing of the virus hitting and the economy taking a turn was right in line with some of our statutory notices for addressing staff and FTEs. So we really didn't make a change in fiscal year 21 with staff reductions. It's the same 5 that I've taken from the first forecast I'm holding on to for this forecast, and that represents $325,000 worth of savings. But in the outer years, fiscal year 22 and in fiscal year 23, I am looking at pulling back all 15 teachers if our enrollment drops by that 200 that we've been experiencing each of those years. And you can see that represents just short of $1 million in savings. In the first forecast, I put in there a 2.0% increase in all the department and school budgets. And that's in line with what I anticipated the consumer price index to be, that if the price of a gallon of milk goes up and we're receiving more revenue because of that, we should expect that we're going to pay a little bit more for a gallon of milk in our schools, or a ream of paper in our schools, or a computer for our students and our staff. So I did have a 2.0% increase in all department budgets in the first forecast. I've pulled that out so that all department budgets will be the same next year as they are this year. And you can see that represents $375,000 in savings in each of those 3 years. The final lever that I pulled to adjust the loss of revenue on our expenditure side was in operations and maintenance capital outlay. That's our roofs, our asphalt, our boilers, our HVAC systems. That's Todd DePaul's budget. And as you know from the first forecast, we were slowly backing down from using Fund 20 in supporting all of those projects and leaning more onto Fund 60, which is in the non-operating budget. And over time, we're going to back down the amount that we spent in the Fund 20 and increase what we spent in Fund 60. In this forecast, you can see that I immediately leaned on Fund 60 for all of our capital projects. So we had $5 million that we were going to spend in Fund 20 in next fiscal year. We had $2 million in 22 and $1 million in 23. And as those numbers went down in 20, they were going up in 60 to make sure that we still had $7.5 or $8.5 million worth of spend in our schools. But in order to soften the loss of the revenue, we're not spending money out of 20, which is in the operating funds, and are going to spend that money into 60. Unfortunately, to do that, we can't spend what we did before. We have to spend less than that. So I expect that in the future forecast, you'll get a better report from me on how much money and the timing of spending that money out of Fund 60. If we do that on average, to get us through 7 years until our bonds are paid off, we've got $3.7 million annually to spend on our buildings, which is much shorter than where we want it to be. If the economy turns around faster, then we'll be in a position where we can start to move money into 20 and start spending more money on our buildings again. But in this forecast, I leaned hard on 20 to balance the budget. Next slide, please. So what does that mean in our operating budget? Fiscal year 20 is the budget that we're presently living. And as you know, we're spending money in areas that we never anticipated spending money in, and we're not spending money in other areas. So it'll be interesting to see if our ending fund balance of $1,788,239 is where we end up. I don't anticipate that it will. I think it'll be different than that because we really have tried to stop spending money in certain areas while we support our schools in a different fashion. You can see in fiscal year 21, which is next fiscal year, given the revenue adjustments and the expenditure adjustments that I've made in this forecast, we've got $1,394,041 in excess. Now that's given that my assumptions are correct, and I think that there's a lot of room for my assumptions to change one way or the other, and I will keep you up to date on that. And then you can see in fiscal years 22 and 23, we start to run a deficit of $3.5 million and $3.4 million. Anything that we do, any positive thing that we do in fiscal year 21 makes the outer years, 22 and 23 and 24 and 25 better. So there's a real hope that the economy turns around quicker, and this is not a forecast that drags on and is a difficult forecast to live through like we did through the Great Recession. As I've talked with my peers, we've had some good debates about the housing market causing the first recession and a virus causing the second, and that if we can get the economy back to work and folks feeling comfortable about going back to their houses and their jobs, that this will hopefully rebound quicker than the recession of 2008. Given this forecast, you can see what our fund balance as a percent of our revenues are. It drops from 32.84 to 32.64 to 31.11 to 29.53. So that is a downward trend in that, but again, this is one of several forecasts that you're going to receive as a Board of Education. Next slide, please. Our non-operating forecast has not changed from 6 weeks ago. This is the exact same non-operating forecast that you saw at that particular point in time. The question now is, how are we going to spend money out of Fund 60, which is in this budget to support our schools? And if we do decide that we're going to do an average of $3.7 million, this will change slightly, but not much. This is the payment of our schools. This is the money that we receive from developer contributions. This is any money that we have extra that we can pass in through resolution to help support our schools. So I don't anticipate this non-operating forecast to change very much. Next slide, please. Finally, as I said before, this is the first of several forecasts, and one that's certainly very different than the one I presented 6 weeks ago. We are consulting with our financial advisors on almost a daily basis. Matt Shipley's done a phenomenal job of processing a great deal of information and following up on information and leads about what we're hearing associated with our tax collection, both in DuPage and Will County. We are in a position where if we do have delayed payments, we can still make it through to the summer. We're not in a position where we need to take out a tax anticipation warrant, but we are monitoring this regularly. The CARES Act, the federal grant that will be awarded, looks like we're in line to receive $1,118,820 of that. Illinois State Board of Education has to apply for the grant, and then they have to disseminate it. So it'll probably be in August or September by the time we know exactly how much we're going to receive and where we want to spend it. But $1,118,000 is a small amount when you look at the size of our budget. It's really doesn't move the needle a lot. As I mentioned, we're monitoring our tax collections and our distributions. There's some discussion about DuPage tomorrow passing a resolution or ordinance, I guess, to not penalize people who pay their taxes late, and will allow them to pay them in the second installment in September. So we'll be following up with the Board of Education on what that might mean to us in a board memo. As you are, and seems like the rest of the world, everyone's connecting on Zoom regularly, and the superintendent's cabinet is also connecting on Zoom, and we will be talking about this as we have over the last week. And then finally, I think I'm in a position now where I'll be communicating with the board more than I have probably last year or the year before as new information becomes available to discuss the forecast and how we move into a budget that seems reasonable. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
This is Mike Brazak. Board members, again, difficult for me to see your hands, so please ask questions as necessary. Questions for Jay? It appears I do not hear any questions, Mr. String. Thank you. Most difficult forecast to present to the board, but it's appreciated that you're at the forefront with this in order that we can future plan for our district. So thank you, Mr. String.
Thank you, Mr. Razak, and board members. I will keep you updated as quickly as I can.
Thank you. We are now moving to our action items. Given the forecast that we just heard, the administration has made 2 recommendations for our consideration. Please identify yourself as you make your motion or second. I need a motion to reject the HVAC bids for Phase 4 elementary school air conditioning for the elementary school air conditioning project. Do I have a motion?
This is Mark Rising. I'll make a motion to rejection of the HVAC bids for phase, that was 6, correct, Mike?
That's correct. It's
Elementary
Phase
school.
6.
Yep. Phase 6 elementary school air conditioning project as presented.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
This is Kathy. I'll make a second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Jackie, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Ms. Peel,
Aye.
Mr. Karubas,
I really hate to do this. We were so close. Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Mr. Rasak,
Aye.
Ms. Deming.
Aye.
There seems to be a lot of reluctant ayes. The motion passes. Again, please identify yourself as you make your motion or second. I need a motion to reject the electrical bids for Phase 6 elementary school air conditioning project.
I make a motion that we reject the electrical bids for Phase 6 elementary school air conditioning project.
There is a motion. A second, please.
This is Lori Donahue. I second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Jackie, will you please call the roll?
Natasha Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Mr. Rasak,
Aye.
Ms. Peel,
Aye.
Mr. Rising,
Aye.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Mr. Karubas,
I don't want to.
Is that an aye?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Those were the most reluctant ayes I've ever heard in the history of my time on the Board of Education. We are now moving back to the discussion stage for board updates. Number 1, We're going to assume that the Illinois Association of School Boards will continue to have a conference in November. As a result, I received a memorandum from them on April 1st, first asking for a resolution. So if there are resolutions that you might be considering for the Illinois Association of School Boards, please contact me and tell me what those resolutions are so we can bring them in front of the board and in front of the public. So thank you for that. District 204 and the school board mourns the passing of elementary school principal Tim Cramble. I was a colleague of Tim. I have very difficult. He was a true servant leader. He was ever present, not only at White Eagle, but at all district events. And we know that he's going to be sorely missed by the District 204 community. Also, on behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to express our appreciation and thanks to the entire school community for all your efforts during this difficult time. To our essential workers, organic life, and first student workers, thank you for ensuring that our students and families can perform to the best of their abilities because they are not hungry. To our Airmark custodians, thank you also for your support in our efforts and continuing to make sure our schools are safe. To our teachers and support staff, thank you for your quick adaptation to a new paradigm of teaching and learning. You have remarkable flexibility. As a board, we especially appreciate that you are making personal connections to your students. To our central office staff and school administrators, thank you for your behind-the-scenes work to coordinate teaching, learning, hiring, technology, communication, and finance. Anything that goes well takes tremendous planning and coordination. As Dr. Sullivan mentioned, thank you IPEF for being an extension of the school district and supporting those students that are in need. As if parenting is not difficult enough, thanks to our parents for adding another job title to your resume. Your support is appreciated. To our students, thanks for your participation in remote learning and also reaching out to your friends to make sure that they are doing well. This is not easy, and we appreciate your resiliency. It appears to me and to our board that together we are running a marathon. There will be hills and some potholes on our route. Please know that we will probably not run the perfect race, but we are running in the right direction. With patience and resolve, we will finish the race and somehow be better for it. So thank you to the community. With that, please identify yourself as you make a motion or a second. I need a motion to adjourn.
Hey,
Mr.
Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, this is Kathy, PO, board member. I would just, I appreciated all you said. I'm just going to double down on the efforts that have been made to communicate with the staff, especially. It is outstanding. And the emphasis on the social emotional well-being of our students and our staff comes first. And I really, really appreciated that. That is just outstanding. So I just want to double down on that.
Ms. Donahue, do you want to say, before we go to adjournment, anything about the masks?
Well, so we are collecting masks for our transportation, food service, and others in the district, and we would love to collect around 1,000 masks. We have a drop-off tomorrow at Granger and at, what's the other one? I lost my mind there.
Still,
And two of our schools, what was it?
still middle school and
Still,
grade.
yeah, still, yeah. And also on Thursday from 2 to 4. And there's information up on the IPPC website, and also if you follow me on Facebook, it's up there. And I know several people also have shared this. So as many masks as you can create, we can take. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue, for your efforts and IPPC's efforts also. Anybody else before we adjourn? With that, Mr. Karubis,
Motion to adjourn. Great meeting, everybody.
do I have a second?
Second, Mark.
All in favor, say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Bye.
The meeting is
everybody.
ended. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.